Armchair History TV is the newest place to find your favorite history content creators. It's ad-free, unlike this, unfiltered, with an extensive library of over 150 videos and counting, with an exclusive podcast and Discord community to help you keep up with all the action. Use code HISTORYLAND for 50% off your subscription. Welcome back to the Adventures in Historyland YouTube channel, everybody. We have returned. I am of course your host, who you should remember if you are a regular to this channel, because I appear every time. Today we're joined by a new guest, but someone who I think will be familiar to those of you who come to this strange corner of the internet via Twitter. You'll know her as Second Crossing on Twitter. But of course, this is the incredibly, I don't know, impressive, because that channel is incredibly impressive, Irene. Irene Kim. And I'm delighted that you've come on the channel today.
Thank you, and I'm very flattered. Every time I receive any compliment about my day-to-day journal of the campaigns, I'm really surprised that many people liked it. So yeah, my name's Irene, and I'm currently based in Seoul, South Korea. And my main area of interest is 18th century to 19th century European and American history. And I think this area of American history is relatively unknown to many people. The early life of George Washington and his linkage to the 7 Years' War in the mainland Europe. I greatly identified with Washington as a man when I was very young, and it's because of a spectacular development from an officer, a clueless young officer who seriously messed things up at the frontiers of the America, to become exactly 20 years later commander of the force of the to be independent United States of America. And my earliest works in this field, this is my annal French and Indian War I made made when I was in, I think, 10th to 11th grade in high school. And I continued to delve into this subject until now. So I hope, my presence will be greatly enjoyed by all the viewers. Thank you.
Yeah, I have no doubt that it will. That is very similar to how I got interested in history, through sort of trying to tell stories about it. And today, yes, it's all about, it is kind of a little bit about how on earth George Washington first crashes onto the scene, and how strange it is, actually, that he becomes commander-in-chief of the Continental Army in 1775, because it doesn't start out so well. But that's skipping ahead. This video is going to be about the beginnings of what in America, as the Americans have that nice habit of calling every war something different because it happens on their continent. The French and Indian War, which is of course the North American version of the 7 Years' War. And indeed, the instigator of the 7 Years' War happens in North America. And it happens because of a gentleman by the name of George Washington doing some pretty nefarious things in the woods.
Nefarious.
Nefarious things in the woods. This conflict is kind of the tail end of a rivalry between New France and, for a better word, New England, the colonies of the British. And as far as I have been given to understand from my reading, it centers on, at this point, the flashpoint is the Ohio Valley. What would you say the significance of the Ohio and the European rivalries in America are for this story?
After the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle in 1748, it served as an empty area in the imaginations of the European settlers, and a linchpin for their balance of power in North America in two regards, I would say. The first of all, geopolitically speaking, for New France, They or the Governor General named Marquis de Galissonière and Marquis de Caen, they desired to complete the axis between the St. Lawrence River Valley, the Great Lakes, and the Mississippi, which would seamlessly link the Trois-Rivières, the Illinois country, and the Pays d'En-Haut, the northern countries around the areas of Michigan, Wisconsin, etc., so as to build a seamless waterway that would enable effect a trade route between their native allies and the French settlers, while containing the British to the East Coast. And conversely, the British, like Governor Dinwiddie of Virginia and Hamilton of Pennsylvania, they desired to avoid becoming cornered at the coastal plains at the expense of allowing the French to expand endlessly westward. And then there was the economic interest. First of all, for the British, there was the interest in expanding their settlements for excess population, a concern which had been addressed by the lords of the trade at home, which actually, facilitated this by endowing 500 acres of land to the Ohio Company in, I believe, 1749, so as to allow the settlers into the Ohio River Valley and maintain its trading posts. But for the French as well, they wanted access to this land because it was fertile and it was full of beavers, the population of which had been decimated in the East Coast after the beaver wars in the mid to late 17th century. And the British continued to, conduct missions to contest the claims to the Ohio River Valley because that treaty, the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, which ended, the War of the Austrian Succession or King George's War in America, that remained silent on the rights to the Ohio River Valley, or La Belle Rivière, as addressed by the French. And then there was the contradiction between Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle and the preceding treaty, the Treaty of Witterettes of 1713, which ended the Queen Anne's War, which granted the British the suzerainty over the Iroquois, including the trading rights. So who really was the Ohio Valley? And then we get the third agents called the Native Americans, the Six Nations of the Iroquois and the Algonquin-speaking tribes inhabiting the areas west of Ohio mostly, and the east coast of Canada, around mostly the Great Lakes. Now, their interest was very disparate from the British and the French. Their interest was to maintain their autonomy by pitting one European power against another, maintaining a trilateral equilibrium in the North American continent. This they first did by siding with one or the other power since the establishment of the British and the French settlements. And then when it culminated in the Beaver Wars of the mid-17th century, there was a treaty, the Great Peace of Montreal, which was negotiated by Joncaire with the Iroquois and the Hurons, in which the Iroquois promised to maintain strategic neutrality between the British and the French. And this strategic neutrality of the Iroquois managed to continue till early 18th century, until the missions by George Croghan and Conrad Weiser in 1748, when they, representing the interest of the British Crown, began to confer with the local Native Americans by, soliciting them to allow them to establish their trading posts in the area, exchanging gifts so as to, draw them further to the orbit of the British power vis-a-vis that of the French. And then the French retaliated by sending the commandant of Fort Detroit named Céléron de Blainville in the next year, 1749. He began traveling from Detroit to Lockstown, bearing lead plates marking the French claims to the Ohio River Valley on each point of his travel. And he reported to the commandant at Trois-Rivières that they were noticing increasing hostility by the previously neutral Indians towards the French, a clear sign that they were aligning with the British. And the British effort culminated in the Treaty of Lockstown on 2nd June 1752, when the same Pennsylvanian and Virginian land speculators visited the Logstown, summoned sachems of the Six Nations, and then confirmed the British claims to the area and the rights to trade, and secured a guarantee from the Indians that their settlements will not be harmed by the Native Americans. And then here enters a pivotal figure in the early phase of the French and Indian War and the early life of George Washington. His name is Half King, or Tanach Harrison, which is spelled in many different ways in both British and French sources. He was born a Catawba Indian who were like a tribe living in perpetual conflict with the Onondagas, one of the Iroquois tribe living in middle part of the American East Coast. And then later in his life, he was raised a Seneca after being captured by the tribes. In between, somewhere in between, he suffered a French slavery, and he had a deep resentment of the French because of that reason. At the same time, he notices that because of the increasing European encroachments onto the faraway dominions of his land, which is quite far from the center of the Iroquois Six Leagues, he has the desire to maintain his tribe's sense of autonomy between both the British and the French. And he is entitled by the British traders to designate Chief Shingas as the chief of Delaware, one of the client states of Iroquois, which enhances his presence among the League of the Iroquois. But then there was the French reprisal on a small post called Pickawillany against the Miami chief named La Demoiselle, that was his nickname, who showed signs of following the examples of the Iroquois and defecting to the British. The French cadet named Charles de Langlade, who was the lead of that expedition, ended up sacking the town, the trading posts, killing the British traders, and eating the chief alive by boiling him right after the massacre. So this is the tense situation in the Ohio River Valley immediately after the end of the war of immediately after Queen Anne's and King George's War.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's excellent background to everything here. I couldn't, no, literally, I couldn't have outlined it any better. In representing the rivalry between the French and the British in the Ohio, and it's interesting. I always find in within that sphere the fact that the French, who have always been very comfortable with the amount of Indian allies that they have between the Ohio and the Pays d'Anneau, which the French sort of had this sort of monopoly over because only the French trappers went that far west, and that they feel threatened now because the Iroquois, also known as the Haudenosaunee, obviously seem to be favoring the British a little. And that gets a lot of people worried because the Iroquois, Haudenosaunee, any of the other names that people want to give them, they have always hated the French to some extent or another. They were bitter enemies during the late 17th century and through the Beaver Wars. And so this is indeed a very troubling situation for the French, because the reason New France exists is because of the fur trade, and they are fully centered on trading posts and encouraging trade with the local nations, whereas the British are somewhat more land-based interested, and they prefer to settle places and develop them. But they need the room because, and as most students of this war will know, the populations of the British colonies are far greater than the population of New France. So people are getting very anxious, people are getting very suspicious, violence is breaking out, and and into this glides a Virginian gentleman by the name of George Washington. What do we know about George Washington at this time?
So George Washington, he was a rich boy born in his family estate in Popes Creek, Virginia, and from very early age, just around this time, he has the luck of receiving the patronage of George William Fairfax, one of the richest men in Virginia back then. And this is because in 1743, his older brother, half-brother Lawrence, marries the sister of Fairfax, and the father Fairfax, I mean. And in March 1748, he was just 16, and he manages to stand out before the elder Fairfax, who regards him as a very bright boy, and arranges his career as a professional land surveyor in the most lucrative area of North America, the Ohio River Valley, or the western frontier of Virginia and Pennsylvania, as it was known back then. So Washington first starts his career as the apprentice of a man named James Glenn to map the southern branch of the Potomac River in western Virginia. In the next year, March 1748, Fairfax then commissions Washington again. Clearly, he was satisfied with the boy's performance to join his surveying expedition to Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. And just a few months later, on July 1749, Washington is appointed the surveyor of Culpeper Country, Virginia, which is a northern district in Virginia, by the College of William and Mary. The behind story to this is rather complicated. The college had been commissioned to appoint one surveyor per each county in order to curb the impact of excessive patronage by men like Fairfax. But it has been speculated that given George Washington's extremely tender age and lack of experience, that Fairfax had actually maneuvered to land Washington in this position in this young age. So Washington's skill sets are at this time include lining and mapping the boundaries of tracts of land. In September 1747, for instance, he gets to practice his first profession by purchasing an instrument called 2-foot Gunter scale from a cousin living far away, which helped simplify the trigonometric calculation when marking the boundaries and mapping them. And this gets him used to this densely wooded backcountry of Virginia and Pennsylvania. So at first, his personal first impressions of the backcountry are not very optimal, not very bright. He calls the backcountry dwellers uncouth parcel of barbarians. And, you can assume from this remark that his opinion of the Native Americans would have been probably similar, along the same line. And what he hated the most during this time was his bivouac, which he called nothing but a little straw matted together without sheets or anything else, a condition which would continue to haunt him until he resigns in 1758. Mm-hmm.
The horror.
Yeah. And that's the young Washington, the teenage Washington. He first wants to join the Marine or the Navy, but his mother objects to this decision. And now he wants to become an officer in the provincial regiment of the Virginia state. Okay? And how he gets appointed to his first post ever in the military was Dinwiddie's alarm raised to the House of Burgesses in 1748 to 1749. Let me correct it, 1753 to 4, that the French have been constructing a series of fortifications along the Ohio River, the forks of the Ohio, as it is called, as if threatening to enclose the western Pennsylvanian and Virginian frontier to the coastal British settlers. And these forts included Fort Presque on the Erie Lake, Fort Le Boeuf, Fort Venango, and Fort Michel, which was not finished at the time and would be finished in 1754. And Dinwiddie cites a letter from the Lords of Trade that he recommends a strict friendship and affection to the Indians and showing the usefulness of giving a proper encouragement to foreign Protestants to settle in the interior parts of his domain. And for this to happen, the French must be eliminated from the Ohio River Valley, obviously. He also informs the state representatives that a large body of French regulars and Indians had marched from Canada to River Ohio in a hostile manner, decidedly, to invade His Majesty's territories and actually build a fort on His Majesty's land. How dare he? That's his attitude. So in the next October, 27th October 1753, Washington receives commission, and it says, the governor acquainted the board, George Washington, adjutant general for the Southern District, had offered himself to go properly commissioned to the commandant of the French forces to learn by what authority he presumes to make encroachments on His Majesty's lands on the Ohio. And Dinwiddie formally confirms his commission 3 days later on the 30th that Washington is assigned to, ensure that he makes sure the French know that they had violated the peace and dignity of our sovereign, the King, to Great Britain. And his project involves corresponding with the half-king from the Treaty of Lockstown and another Oneida sachem named Monacatucha, it's very difficult to pronounce, at Lockstown, and travel together to the French fort and deliver a personal letter of warning by Dinwiddie to the commandant there, as well as studying meticulously, using his experience as a land surveyor, to find out what the Frenchmen's pretensions are. So Washington embarks on this tedious journey on the 31st October. He sets out from Alexandria, and he takes along his former swordmaster and later translator, Jacob van Dram. He is a Dutchman who would play a very indispensable role in Washington's later career, which I will mention again. And then they, go to the Wills Creek to gather supplies. And in November 14th, he meets Christopher Gist, a key British trader who had played, very important roles in the treaties with the Indians in, the previous decade. And then on the way, he observes a site of influence between the Monongahela and the Allegheny, where Fort Duquesne would later be built. And he, shows his acumen as a land surveyor that by writing to Dinwiddie that the land at Forks is extremely well suited for building a fort, as it has the absolute command of both rivers. They arrive together at Lockstown on the 25th November, where they meet Chief Shinghas, the one appointed during the Treaty of Lockstown, and they help deliver the Washington's parties to the half-king nearby. And it's on 26th November, 3 p.m., that Washington first meets Half-King. Now, he is in his mid to late 50s, and Washington is in his early 20s. So you can really sense from the third-person perspective, the gross discrepancy in their life experience in general. And Washington, by this time, remains very naive. He requests, he makes a request to Half-King that he guide them to the nearest and the levelest way to the French fortification, meaning the Fort Le Boeuf and Fort Venango in the northern part of the river. And the Half-King says the road has become impassably muddy, and that he should take them by an alternative route, which will take about 5 to 6 nights of sleep. And he makes a very ominous speech against the French to confirm his allegiance to the supposed allegiance to the British here, saying, "Now, fathers, or onontio, meaning the term the Indians use to address any French representative. It is you that is disturber in this land by coming and building your towns, taking it away unknown to us by force. Father, we kindled a fire a long time ago at a place called Montreal, where we desired you to stay, not come intrude upon our land. Fathers, both you and English are white. We live in a country between, therefore the land does not belong to either to one or the other. but the great being above allowed it to be a place of residence for us. So, Father, I desire you to withdraw, lest I lay down a trial for both. Now, Washington doesn't seem to, imbue a particular meaning to this speech because he, although he's acquainted with the backcountry per se, he doesn't know about the intricate diplomacy between the Native Americans and the British and the French. So they go down the way, and on 4th December, the party stops at Fort Venango, where Washington meets the son of the Joncaire who had negotiated the Great Peace of Montreal, named Captain Philip Thomas Chabert de Joncaire, known as Nitachinon by the Indians. And like his father, he shows the art of diplomacy to this clueless, officer, meaning he shows the art of prevarication. He pretends to, take note of Dinwiddie's letter, saying, okay, but there is another officer at the next fort. You can show him that. Meanwhile, inviting Washington to sup with him with the greatest complacence. And Joncaire and a number of French cadets there finally becomes, in Washington's words, dosed plentifully with wine and gave license to their tongues to reveal their sentiments more freely. According to Washington, they said it was in their absolute design to take possession of the Ohio, and by God, they would do it, for though they were sensible that the English could raise 2 men for their one, meaning if they cede 1 inch of the Ohio River Valley to the English, their greater population will sooner or later engulf the whole of Ohio in very short amount of time. Washington and Gist are kept in there for 1 to 2 days more until on 6th December, Half King persuades him to make his statement clear to Joncaire and set up a council fire to deliver the speech. Now that actually takes place in which the Half King offers Joncaire a wampum belt to emphasize how serious their intentions are. But Joncaire, again, cleverly refuses to take it. So they have been rejected. But Washington doesn't seem very disappointed about this. And Christopher Gist, who was Washington's travel companion, later said Joncaire did everything he could to prevail on our Indians to stay behind us, which Gist had to personally intervene not to happen. And when they finally reach Fort Le Boeuf on 15th December and delivers Dinwiddie's letter to the commandant there, named Jacques Legardeur de Saint-Pierre, the same thing happens. Okay? So they are again invited to a supper with plentiful stores of liquors, provisions, etc., where the French appear to be extremely affectionate and complacent. And here, it's revealed later that they are kind of intending to set the British Indians at variance with their former allies to prevent their going till after our departure. But it was better than the previous one because he promises to send a letter to Marquis Duquesne at in Quebec. But he makes sure that Washington knows this. As to the summons you send me to retire, I don't think myself obliged to obey it. I don't know that anything has happened in the course of this campaign which can be construed as an act of hostility. And Washington leaves on the 23rd of December, a day after Legardeur writes his formal response to be directed to Marquis Duquesne. Washington now compiles his diaries of this travel and as well as a map describing the situation of French fortifications on the River Ohio. And then he travels back to Williamsburg. So Dinwiddie, becomes acquainted with everything by 21st January 1754, and he calls for an emergency measure to raise defense funds for the common cause against the French infiltration of the Ohio River Valley. Mm-hmm. So this is about the behind story of Washington's unlucky debut on the eve of his first campaign.
Yes, it's actually quite a complicated story when you get into it, what the backstory behind what Washington is doing in the Ohio. And it's originally a diplomatic mission trying to figure out to challenge the French right to the Ohio
Right.
because the French are building things there, and well, that's a problem.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating to see the character of George Washington is still as stuffy as it is in 1775 in 1755. He's still very proper. He's still quite disdainful of, well, people in rural areas, we'll call it. He doesn't really understand a lot of the politics he's involved in, nor can
Right.
he, because he doesn't have the experience. And
Mhm.
he's very much there to be played, I think, in a way. As we've just seen through the negotiations he has on his journey towards Fort Duquesne. And with that, we have 3 minutes to go. So why don't we just restart the call and we'll get
Yeah.
into what George did next. Thank you for watching that video, guys. Please like and subscribe on the way out. And remember, you can use my exclusive code HISTORYLAND for 50% off your subscription at Armchair History TV, where I will be making exclusive content for everybody who is signed up. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again for another adventure in Historyland the next time.